welcome to Conversations in Commonality. I'm introducing you to Stella, Rael, and our special guest, Lani, for the day. All right, Stella and Rael, take it away.
Thank you so much, Candace. She's already introduced us. So today in our Conversations in Commonality, we are going to talk about the LGBTQ plus.
Got it right, Stella.
I didn't even have to look.
Got it.
Wow. Community.
Stella's been rehearsing.
Yeah.
My 11-year-old says,
Yeah. I'll admit it, I had to really take my time and process this, with emphasis in our transgender population. Our guest is Lani Aharoni, who happens to be the son of our marketing strategist, Yasmin Bender. So they're also our special guests today. Rael, I just have to mention, I don't know if anyone's seen you on Instagram, but your dance is nothing but joy. I have to embarrass you because it was just a moment that we had together, and I'm sharing it with the world. So if you have not seen this man cut a rug for 30 seconds, please take a moment and go see that, because it will just make you smile.
Thank you. It was a personal moment I was having.
Yeah, I'm sorry to
with
share
Colin
it.
and John Legend, but I will share it with the world.
Kind of late, it's already shared. So for those of you that are new to Conversations in Commonality, Rael's going to give us a little talk about it, how it came about, and what we hope to accomplish with these conversations.
Well, thank you, Stella. The conversations actually have been happening for years. We've always had these great conversations behind the scenes. And one day, a few months ago, I said to Stella, we've got to take these conversations live. We have to provide a platform, a trusting platform, a platform where people can express themselves in an environment where they feel safe, where they can ask questions, not be judged, the non-judgment zone.
Yes.
Ask questions, not be shy, not be embarrassed. We know that everyone is coming in with good intentions, and really a platform to educate people, most of all ourselves. So it's been incredible. I am so excited about this platform. I'm actually going to say this publicly. I'm feeling more excited about this platform than education, and that's a lot. So, okay, I didn't say that. We can censor that, but...
You've actually said it twice today.
I've said it twice today. Look, I'm excited about education. I'm an educator at heart. I just love education. But education is providing us with this platform. Yes. And this platform is so important. We talk about well-being. We teach well-being, but well-being does not stop with the person. It is the well-being of our community, our society, and our planet. And I am so excited about these conversations in commonality. So over to you and Lani.
Well, you're still educating, so don't take that away.
Right,
true. We're still educating.
This
people,
is education,
and we're all learning together. So if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to send them in the chat. Candace is going to be monitoring them as we go on to as we move forward with our conversation today. With that, I'm going to hand this over to our special guest, Lani. Hey, Lani, how are you today?
Good. Thank you guys for having me. I really, really appreciate it. And I love everything Rael said. And I love you, Rael, so much. Like, this is such a good platform. And normally companies do this thing where they like pretend to be like woke or whatever. But this is like real and really educating people and having these conversations and being like humble and learning yourself. And that is so amazing. So thank you for that. And I just want to reiterate what Stella said. This is a learning platform, a learning opportunity, a conversation between me and you guys. So this isn't just going to be me talking at you. And if you have any questions or any comments or anything, please put them in the chat. And yeah, this is a safe space. If you don't be afraid to make mistakes, we're all learning. I wasn't born with all of this amazing knowledge. I had to go to talks like these and watch YouTube videos and do all of this. So yeah, you're learning, and it's great for sure.
Thank you, Lani. Lani, could I just add one word of introduction about you? Because during our last Conversations in Commonality, first I'll go back one stage. Yasmin is a dear, dear friend of mine. We've been friends for years. I've loved Yasmin for years. And we reconnected a little while ago. And Yasmin was telling me about her son, Lani, and I was just so taken up. And in our last conversations, Lani, I was transfixed by you and your mom. I just couldn't take my eyes off you on the screen. And the moment I finished our conversations, I said to Stella, we walked out that evening, and Stella said, do you have an idea for our next Conversations in Commonality? I said, I know what it's going to be, but I cannot tell you.
You got the secret from me. Can you believe
and
that?
She said, well, tell me. I said, I cannot tell you. And the next morning, I was about to write to your mom and say, would it be okay if I asked Lani to be our guest? And
it was.
Just before I started texting, I got a text from Yasmin saying, Lani would love to do a section on conversations. And Lani, I love you too. You're an amazingly brave young man. I am just so taken up by you. And I don't want to take one more moment. Thank you.
Thank you. That really means a lot to me. And I guess I didn't really do any introducing. So hi, I'm Lani. I'm 18. I graduated high school last June. I'm also transgender, so that's a thing. And I came out about 3 years ago, and I started medically transitioning about 2 years ago. And yeah, it's been pretty good, a pretty good experience. And so being transgender is what that means is that I was assigned female at birth, and I identify as male. And it's different from sex. So I actually have a little picture for you guys. Oh, I'm not a host. So
yeah, so can you make him a host?
Yes. One moment, Lani, we're making you the host now.
Yeah. I'm gonna be a host.
Hold on.
Lani, while we're doing this, I know we've spoken privately about this. And would you mind just sharing how you told your mom and your dad about
Okay, so I'm also a huge nerd, so it's kind of embarrassing. I came out with a PowerPoint. I spent months making this PowerPoint. It had 40 plus slides. It was breaking down what being trans was, how I figured it out, what I wanted to do, what other people said, these resources, everything. And in hindsight, it probably wasn't the best way because it definitely overwhelmed them with information, complete overwhelm, but that's okay. It all worked out for the best. And honestly, it was a good PowerPoint. I'm proud of it. It was better than any school PowerPoint I've ever done. So I'm pretty proud of it. Yeah.
Amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So Lani is host right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Cool. Awesome. Oops, not that. This, cool. So this is the genderbread person, like the gingerbread person, but with gender. And there's 4 different gradients, as you can see, spectrums, if you will. And there's gender identity, which is being that's what you identify as in your brain, with the brain. I identify as a man. And then 2 spectrums down, there's biological sex, which is all the physical characteristics and, what you were assigned at birth, basically. So I was assigned female at birth, now I identify as a man. Gender expression is your clothes, makeup, anything you use to express the gender that you are. So yeah, that's clothes and makeup and stuff. And sexual orientation is something different than gender. I feel like a lot of times people conflate the two and think that, who you're attracted to is who you identify as, but that's actually not the case. You can be a trans man and gay or bi or straight or whatever, which is kind of cool, I think. And yeah. Oops. Whoa. I don't know what that was. But yeah, I guess those are all the definitions. There's also, so the difference between gender and sex is that sex is physical and gender is a social construct. So that basically means that it doesn't exist outside of our society, which sounds kind of far-fetched, I know, because it's such an ingrained part of our lives and everything we do revolves around gender. But if we look at like chimpanzees, actually me and my mom had this conversation yesterday. She asked me, we were taking a walk, and she asked me, do you think like chimps or squirrels have a gender? Like, do you think they think of themselves as like female or male? And I don't think they do. In fact, science knows that they don't, because gender, we created that. We created the idea of woman and man. And basically all it is how you identify and what you express. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. That's the slide, so I'm going to stop sharing now. Yeah. And it's also not only trans people that have a gender, like all of you guys have genders as well, which is pretty sick. And you guys can explore them as well. Like it's not just for trans people to explore, but yeah.
Wow, it's an amazing diagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really helped me when I was learning about all this stuff. Cause like I said before, I didn't have like this knowledge, like I wasn't born with it, obviously. And that was something that my therapist actually showed me when I went to therapy. And he was like, these are all the different things. And it really helped me. And also we know that gender is a social construct because of different cultures have different ideas of gender, right? And throughout history, there's been different ideas of gender. Like a really fun fact that I learned was high heels were originally created for men and not for women. And when I learned that, I was like, whoa, that's so cool. And also, you know, like there's with Native American cultures, there's two-spirit people. And I'm not really that versed on different like cultures, but I know in India, there's something like that as well. And in the Philippines and stuff like that, which is really cool. And there's also a couple other definitions that I think we should get straight before we like dive on in. There's also non-binary people. I'm a binary trans man, which means that I identify fully as a man, not anywhere in between. But non-binary people exist in between that spectrum that was shown before, the gender identity spectrum, or not even on that spectrum at all. There's some people that don't feel that they have a gender at all, which is kind of cool, I think. And then there's also medically and socially transitioning. So like I said before, I started medically transitioning 2 years ago, which means that I started taking testosterone. I started considering surgery and stuff like that, which is the right path for some people. And it was definitely the right path for me. And I'm very glad I went through with that, but not for everyone. Yeah. And socially transitioning is things like cutting your hair, changing your name and pronouns and stuff like that. And yeah. Speaking of pronouns, don't like when talking to trans people, I know this is a question that I get a lot when I tell people I'm trans. They ask me like, oh, like, how do I talk to trans people? Like, how do I refer to you? And that's a fair question. And I think the best way to do that is ask the person, which can be a little bit awkward at first. But if I was walking on the street and a stranger came up to me and they didn't really know what I was, I would want them 100% to ask me, hey, dude, like, do you prefer he, him pronouns or she, her pronouns? Like, what do you prefer? And I would say he, him, and then we would move on with our lives, right? And that would be cool. And there's also this thing called gender dysphoria, which is what I experienced, and a lot of binary trans people experience, and some non-binary people too. It's what you get diagnosed with to go on with medically transitioning. I know I'm throwing a lot at you guys. So like, if you have any questions or you want me to go over a term more, like feel free to type that in the chat. But yeah, that was I went to therapy for about like a year before I started testosterone. And that whole year we were dissecting my feelings and like, as you do in therapy, I guess, but like my feelings specifically towards gender and like how I felt and how like, so gender dysphoria is a feeling that you get when there's incongruence between how you're presenting and what you feel you are inside. And so there was a lot of incongruence between me before I started medically transitioning and even socially transitioning to me now. Like, and gender dysphoria, it's a hard feeling to describe. It kind of feels like you want to crawl up into a ball and get into a hole, but also like there's ants crawling all over your body and you want to just tear your skin off. It's not a fun feeling, but you know, it happens and it's fine. And medically transitioning definitely alleviates that. That's the point of transitioning. Or for some people, and for some people it's not. They can just do whatever they want, and that's totally fine. And along with that is passing. So that's what I was talking about before. When I walk down the street and someone doesn't know like what gender I am, I would say like, oh, I didn't pass in that situation. But when I go in public, I pass most of the time, which means that most people, when they look at me, they can 100% tell I'm male. I don't have to explain it. They just read me as a cis dude. Oh, and cisgender is the opposite of transgender, which means you identify with the gender you were assigned at birth. So probably most of you here are cisgender, which is a thing, yeah. And detransitioning. So that is when you when you go back, but that's an outdated way of kind of defining it, because if people detransition, I think there used to be more of a toxic culture towards people who detransitioned. Like it was kind of looked down upon and looked at like they were making the community worse, which is not how they should be looked at, because they're people and they deserve like everything too. So that's basically when you go back from medically transitioning or socially transitioning and you identify with the gender you were assigned at birth again. Yeah, I guess that's all the definitions that I have. So, yeah.
Oh, that is a lot to take in.
There's a lot of definitions. I know.
Nice job, though.
Yeah, Lani, I mean, that's what I meant, that this platform is about educating us, because so often we make these innocent mistakes. I mean, they are just, but it's not because of any bad intention or ill intent. We simply don't know.
Yeah.
And then we often feel very uncomfortable. So even in this 10 minutes, you've helped me so much. That diagram was just incredible. It really did inform so much. Lani, can I ask it, when did you know, at what age did you know that you weren't, or your assigned gender was not the gender that you felt comfortable with?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know exactly, because it was very gradual and also was always the way it was. When I thought of myself as a little kid, I didn't think of myself as a girl or a guy. I just thought of myself as a person. And when people would, there's actually a really funny story. I had a best friend that was a guy, and we used to go to McDonald's all the time. And we looked pretty similar. I used to have blonde hair when I was little, and he also had blonde hair. And we both had kind of this length. And we used to go to McDonald's, and they used to always give me the boy toy and him the girl toy. And I used to love it. Oh my God. I was in heaven when they did that. When they thought I was a guy and they read me as a guy, I was like, hell yeah. Like, this is great. Why can't this happen all the time? And that was a sign looking back, but I didn't know that then. And I think I started to get the idea when I learned what the word transgender was. And when I saw trans people existing, mostly on YouTube, I watched so much trans content and I began to see myself in them. And you know, I watched a guy go on testosterone and that whole journey. And that whole time I was thinking, oh, I want that to happen to me. Like, why is that happening to him and not me? Like, that should happen to me. And that was kind of the first inkling. And then I started talking about it with friends and it kind of just snowballed from there until I came out. Yeah.
Well, you know, I don't want to hog all the questions. I've just got so many in my mind, and that would be unfair to everyone else. So, Candace, why don't you open
So
up?
I have a word from Beth. Beth here, she/her. The medical diagnosis of dysphoria is outdated, but it is part of the transition process and a requirement that does need to be documented in the States. She said many people feel it's traumatizing to be diagnosed with this. It's more of a statement, but it's definitely a topic of discussion.
Yeah, it's so true. I think now there's more of a dialogue about dysphoria not being something necessary for being trans. And it's cool. And it definitely is a medical diagnosis. It's not a social thing. It's like being diagnosed with depression, you know? And it is traumatizing to be diagnosed with. Personally, I didn't feel like it was because I felt like it was a gateway to get the medicine that I needed. But I know it's heartbreaking for people when they feel this like deep uncomfortableness with themselves in their body. It's like you're constantly living in the wrong house and you just have to get used to it and nothing's your own and you can never feel comfortable and like chill out. And it's not a good feeling for sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Lani.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else want to speak on that? Okay. I have another question or a statement here from Christine. In Europe, Italy, we have so much of a ways to still do it. Excuse me. She says they have many ways to go, like as in they have a lot of work to do. Even there is some of steps made in society to support, and they need more. So she's giving a little insight on Italy and what's going on there as far as the transition.
That's interesting. Lani, do you have any sense, having done so much research, do you have any sense if society in America is quite forward-thinking, or do we lag behind other countries? Do you have a sense of that?
I would say we're somewhere in the middle. I think in the first world countries of the world, we're definitely in the middle. There's like places like England, they have access to hormones. They have a way longer wait list, but they have access to free hormones, free surgery, like amazing things like that. Whereas here, we definitely have a shorter wait list, but if you don't have insurance, you're screwed. And that can be really, really hard for people, especially like Black trans women. They're the most targeted group. It's actually crazy. Their life expectancy is 35, the average life expectancy of a Black trans woman. Like, that's insane. And it's because of a lot of things. It's because society places this value on masculinity. So when people stray away from that, it's looked down upon. Whereas I am straying away from femininity. So that's kind of seen as better. And also I'm white. So there's obviously that. And yeah, it's not good. And also because trans people have a really hard time getting jobs. I think it's getting better now, but it's a notorious thing that trans people can't get jobs or get fired from jobs for being trans, which directly affects their ability to access the medicine that they need if they want it. So yeah, and yeah, it's not great. Yeah.
Continuing, Christine, she said, I have close friends, beautiful people that I need support and since ever, and I always do. I need support since ever, and she said she always does as well. So thank you for sharing, Christine. I appreciate that. Karen says, so I get she/her, and I get he/him, but I'm not sure I understand they. Explain, question mark.
That's such a good question. Because we don't think we're used to using they, them pronouns, but really the hard part comes when you use them consciously, right? Because we use they, them pronouns for singular people every day, I guarantee it, right? Like if we got a mail, like the mailman came, we would say, oh, they dropped off some mail, but we don't know if they're a girl or a boy. So we say they, and we know we're talking about one person, and that just happens naturally. So it's really just about remembering that it is, one, grammatically correct. It might sound awkward at first, but it's correct. Two, that you already know how to do it. It's just you're getting in your head about it, which is fair and completely fine. And also something that I heard helps a lot of people change pronouns is just really sitting down and practicing, like imagining that person and saying like, Lani, he, Lani, he, Lani, he, and doing that over and over, and maybe imagining having a conversation with them or about them and just referring to them as their chosen pronouns when you're thinking about it also, like not just when you're talking to them. And also have friends correct you and correct friends. That goes so far. And yeah, and don't feel bad about it. It's completely okay to make mistakes as long as you're trying. And even as a trans person, when other trans people come out, I have to take some time to rewire my brain. Like we all make mistakes and it's all completely fine. And we can tell when you're trying. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's a question that came up because Rael and I were on a call last week where one of the moderators was having a challenge. I'm speaking of somebody, and she identifies as they, but she appears female. And the woman was like, she, they. And you could see she was not comfortable or really familiar with it. But at the same time, there was I didn't hear an apology. It was just like she just kept trying to, figure it out and push past it. So it's an interesting question that came up because, we experienced it firsthand.
Well, also the thing is, like, if you make a mistake, don't make a big deal out of it because that can get awkward very fast and awkward for the trans person too. Like, I don't want to think about my pronouns, like, I don't know. I just want to be referred to as the pronouns that I am. So like, if you make a mistake, just say, oh, sorry, and then say the correct pronouns and move on. Like, it's completely fine. And yeah, everybody makes mistakes, as Hannah Montana said.
Yeah, Maria says she's corrected by her 13-year-old daughter all the time. That's amazing.
Amazing. I love it.
All right, well, another question. Throughout your medical transition, have there been ways that you have readjusted or improved your mind/body connection in your new body? Have you found exercise, meditation, some therapy, etc., helpful?
This is such a good question. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Have there been ways that you readjusted? Oh my God, yeah. It took a really, really long time. I would say only in the past 6 months have I felt connected to my body again, which is a great feeling. And also exercise helps so much. Even before I started testosterone, like that was the thing that I would do that would make me feel better. And it would make me, even when you're not trans, exercising is amazing. Like the dopamine and all the endorphins and all that stuff, amazing. And when you are trans and you do some gender affirming exercises, which sounds weird, but when you men typically have broader shoulders and I didn't have that. So I worked on my shoulders a lot and that made me feel really, really good. And I've only recently gotten into yoga and meditation, but that also helps so much, just sitting with yourself. And I think it comes down to really just being okay with being around yourself, whether you're trans or not. We all go through this where sometimes it's kind of not that fun to be around yourself. And yeah, just sitting with that and working through that has really, really helped me. And now I'm at the point where, and I think a lot of trans people get to this point, I hope, being super proud of being trans. And it's not all miserable and sad. I feel so much joy and pride in being trans, I guess. Yeah. And feeling this connection to my body that I didn't have before. Whereas cis people might take it for granted. Just like I take other things for granted, but yeah, it's really amazing. And it does come through with the insurance and medical transitioning thing, that is so important. And that I would not feel the way that I do right now if I hadn't started testosterone or gotten surgery. And it's honestly life-saving. So it's sad that it's very expensive and that a lot of people don't have access to it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that speaks to our healthcare system, and that's a whole topic that we will take on one of our.
Yeah, that is on our list.
Put that one down. So our healthcare system. Lani, you mentioned about trans Black women, and I get so sick. I'm sickened by hatred. I am just sickened by hatred, and I've got to give a call out to our Asian brothers and sisters right now who are suffering because of hate crimes against them, because of the coronavirus, because of COVID. I am so sickened to my core when I hear stories like that the life expectancy of a Black trans woman is 35. I mean, it is just insanity, the environment of hate that exists and prevails today. So anything that we can do, I mean, I feel we're just doing something small, tiny to promote understanding, promote education. We say we're educators. This is more than teaching a teaser or the 100 or the pelvic curl or a double leg stretch, whether the feet are pointed or flexed.
If you exhale here or there.
This is important. So that's what I meant. It's not that Pilates is not important. It's our vehicle. I've devoted so much of my life to it. But whether the feet are plantar flexed or dorsiflexed, it's not earth-shattering. This is earth-shattering. So thank you so much. Lani, one of the things that came up for me recently, it came up as quite I thought an innocent comment. But when I dug deeper into it, I actually found that it was not so innocent. And this is used as a talking point of people that are prejudiced. And that is saying that it is by allowing people to transition, particularly from male to female, it is going to ruin female sports. Mm-hmm. And because they're transgender women that were men, they're coming into the the female environment to compete against women, and that this is going to be the end. It's unfair. They can't go into the same locker rooms. They can't change. They shouldn't compete. It's going to be the end of women's sport and athletics. And in the beginning, I kind of scratched my head. I thought, well, it's something to think about, but it's not. Well, I mean, you can think about it, but thanks to my wonderful wife, Adele, who I believe is in the conversation with us, and Adele, always feel free to unmute and weigh in or send a comment in the chat. But Adele really started educating me and sent me loads and loads of articles, and it made me research athletics, something that I've been so involved in for so many years of my life, exercise physiology. I've been so involved in for so many years, and there is absolutely no scientific basis to it. Quite the contrary. There have actually been studies where they found that their performance actually deteriorated when they transitioned. So there's no credibility, no science that substantiates it. And yet people are out there saying these things that are creating discrimination, perpetuating myth, mm-hmm. and creating a lot of harm, hardship, and ruining people's lives. So I just wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything you're saying. And I think it's a really, really complicated, it's a complicated discussion in terms of the biology, right? Because like you said, when trans women transition, they take estrogen, some of them, and that decreases your physical performance, right? It overrides because we all make estrogen and testosterone, but like cis women have a higher level of estrogen, cis men have a higher level of testosterone. And when you transition, you go to the opposite one if you choose to. And so when trans women start taking estrogen, it levels out so that the testosterone isn't higher, but the estrogen is higher, which decreases their performance. And also, I read this article about this woman who was competing in the Olympics, and she was a cis woman, but she had high levels of testosterone, and they let her compete. Or I don't know if they didn't let her compete or they let her compete, but it goes to show that like, it's not only trans women, like the issue, if the issue was that they had too much testosterone or they had like some advantage, like they don't, right? Like cis women can have the same advantage and they're allowed to compete because they're cis. So it just makes no sense. Yeah.
And just in reading many of these articles, it is so much more complex than and multifaceted than one hormone.
Exactly.
There are so many factors that go into performance that looking at it in that one-dimensional way of just everything being attributed to this one hormone, or two hormones, it is too simplistic. You cannot look at it. There's so many factors that go into it. Even the time of the year that you were born, whether you're going to, they found that most of the Major League Baseball players were born at a certain time of the year. I believe it was August, because then they were older and they then were played in the higher teams, and then went in the higher age groups. They were best in their age group. So then they were scouted by the next league and then by the majors. It was a very long article that went into all these different factors, socioeconomic environment, time of the year that you were born, many factors. And it did not come down to hormones. So they dispelled it completely.
But what's also interesting is that several states now are starting to enact laws that will forbid transgender youth in participating in sports. Utah is one that's writing right now, trying to get a law passed. And it's based on myth, but when these laws are passed, we're affecting our children and their well-being moving forward. So I, again, encourage anybody out there, look at your state laws, look at what's going on in your local school boards, and be proactive and be an ally, because these laws, once they're in place, it punishes all of us, not just one or one group. It punishes all of us in the long run. So I just wanted to bring you awareness to what is happening in the world now based on these conversations.
Yeah.
I have a few comments here. Christine said something really profound. She said that she heard from a surgeon at a hospital that in nature, gender is a spectrum, not a binary system. Which I think was really.
Yeah.
Can everyone hear what Candace is saying, by the way?
Hello.
Okay.
And also sexes as well, like we think of sex as being binary, male and female, but it's actually this thing called a bimodal system instead of a binary system, which means that there's two groups, male and female, that the majority of the population falls into. But then there's four other sexes that is like a really small portion of the population, but they're statistically significant in the amount of gender sexes that exist. So yeah, and that's intersex people, which is not the same as transgender people. But yeah, it's interesting.
Beth made a comment.
Could you just explain the difference there, Lani, just so that we can understand that?
The difference between what and what?
The bimodal?
No, you said intersex and...
Oh, yeah. So intersex is essentially someone who was born with not the sexual characteristics that we associate with either gender. So there are some people that have like a penis and ovaries, or some people that have like that was the only example that came to mind, but there's other combinations. And it's really interesting actually, because that occurs in nature, right? That's not like a socially constructed thing. Like that's a real thing. And it's so interesting because, some of the things that people say against trans people is like, oh, there's only two sexes, you have to choose one. And it's like, well, no, that's not even true, right? There's 6. So, and you don't even have to choose any of those 6. You can be whatever you want. It's all fun. Yeah.
Speaking of,
it's really cool.
Beth was clarifying that Z/Zem is also a binary of those who don't identify as man. For us to be, have some more knowledge there.
Yeah. So
I
there's
think you asked me a question or a comment by Christine.
Yes. Christine was saying that Pilates is a good way to pass/transmit those values that Rael is speaking of, that she feels it is. Fighting the good cause of equal and making America more fair in society. So us in the transgender community can really benefit from Pilates, it sounds like. And I think she's right. Absolutely.
Yeah, he forwarded me an article about that. A transgender person opened up a studio, and it's actually the name is, I don't want to get it wrong, but I think it was Queer and Trans Pilates or something like that. And she was saying how she was at first afraid to even think about opening up a studio, but she felt that trans people needed an environment that was safe, welcoming, provided well-being for them, get them moving.
Yeah.
And she said that it has been nothing but a huge success, that she has found a place, but now she said that she doesn't want it to be identified only as a place for queer and trans people, but a place for all people to feel safe and welcomed and get a workout in. And the article was so inspiring. I was like, if we could take that little feeling, bottle it, and just spread it around the world, Pilates would be, fitness in general would be so much more than what it is now.
Yeah.
I have a question from Sechkin. How does being transgender affect the intimate relationships? Easier or harder? Easier or harder to find matches?
Sorry, can you read that last part again? I didn't hear.
How does transgender affect the intimate relationships? Is it easier or harder to find matches?
Yeah, so I'm not going to speak on my personal experience with that because that's a bit personal, but I think in general, it makes it, well, it depends on the person, depends on the situation, right? It's just like anything. People bring different things into relationships, and you have to deal with different things in not even romantic relationships, but just like friendships, right? People bring different things, different personality traits, different ways they communicate, and you have to figure out how to communicate with each other. And being trans is a part of that. And it's made my friendships way deeper because it's this thing that automatically we connect with. And it's like this deep thing that we get to talk about within like a few meetings. And that's been really, really cool for me. And also it kind of weeds out the bad people, like if they don't want to be friends with me because I'm trans, then cool. And I don't need to spend like so much time, getting emotionally invested. So yeah. But I will say there is a lot of, like violence against trans women as well, specifically Black trans women again. And a lot of that is sexual violence. And it's really, really dangerous for Black trans women or trans women of any, I guess, trans people, but specifically trans women to go on like these dating apps and go on dates. And it can be really, really dangerous and life-threatening, which is very sad, but is a serious thing that people have to deal with. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Another question, Lani, how did coming out as transgender affect your relationship with your parents, siblings, and friends?
Yeah, so I just talked about this a little bit, but it made everything way deeper. Not like relationships with everyone just lit up, I think. I mean, from my perspective. And honestly, life just lit up, which is why being trans, I feel like there's this thought that kind of being trans is a miserable, like sad experience, which it definitely can be. But like anything, there's two sides to the coin, right? So like being trans for me, I didn't feel like I was alive before being trans. Like I honestly, like memories before I came out don't really exist. And if they do, they're very like fuzzy, and I feel like I heard a story and that kind of became my memory. But after I came out as trans, like everything is in color. I feel like I can dance around the room. Like it's amazing. It's great. And my relationship with my friends are incredible. I mean, being trans isn't something we talk about anymore because that kind of, it's all wrapped up in a neat little package for me. But it definitely affects the way I look at the world and affects conversations that I have with people and relationships. And with my parents, I mean, my mom can hop in here, but it's been really good. I feel like we've like gotten closer. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. If she wants to say something, she
Well,
can.
if seeing you on the screen last time was any indication, seeing you and your mom was just a beautiful picture that I will always remember. And Yasmin, if you do want to hop on, and feel free to chime in. If not, I totally get it. Not a problem.
Yeah, I think that it has definitely deepened our relationship and taken us to a completely different level. In our relationship, in my motherhood and my husband's fatherhood, and it's just been a journey of growth and a journey of understanding. And I just give thanks that I've been able to open my mind to this through my incredible child, and being able to be aware of a community that I wasn't aware of at all before. And it's just opened my mind and my heart completely to see people as human beings, and not to place such importance on their gender or conventionalities that we are taught in society. And I love that. I love being able to break away from those norms and think out of the box and the constraints that we've been taught to think. And it's just been an incredible journey, and I'm very, very thankful. It hasn't always been easy, but nothing that is good is easy, really. Nothing in life that really is so rich and so incredible. You always have to go through some kind of a hardship to understand that. So we continue, and I'm just very, very grateful for this opportunity, Rael, and also it's the incredible connections that you keep on making throughout your life because of this, and because you become so open to other people and relationships. It's just incredible to be part of this, to be part of this expansion, to be part of this love, to be a part of this opening of your mindset. That's all I can say. It's just been an incredible journey, and it's not ending. It's not ending. It's just carrying on, and it's amazing.
And that didn't just all happen. That was very beautiful. Thanks, Mom. But that didn't just all happen. We went to family therapy as well, after I came out. So we really put in the work, I guess. And we still go to family therapy just because relationships are constantly evolving, and, communication, we need to figure it out. And also it happened at a really specific time in my life where I was already changing a lot and becoming an adult. I'm an adult, but and it happened as I was becoming 16, 17, 18, which is already a time where you kind of have to focus on communication with parents, especially. So yeah. And also I just want to say that my friends were amazing when I came out. Oh my gosh, I could not have asked for a better reaction. They as soon as I came out, one of my friends played a prank on me, and it wasn't even a thing. I was I'm trans, and then we were walking down the street 2 seconds later, and they changed my pronouns so fast, and it was amazing, and I'm so thankful, and I love them so much. So yeah.
It's incredible. Now, Lani, I don't want to be personal yet, so I'm just going to keep it very general, but typically trans men, would they be attracted to women in intimate relationships?
I don't think there is a typically. I think that's a hard, just with cis people, typically, I guess straight is typical, but I think, I think each person is different, and there's no typical. Does that make sense? I think more trans people are open to being queer and not really putting a label on it, because they've been exposed to this world where you don't need to have a label, and even if you don't want to label your gender, you don't have to, it's just, yeah. So yeah.
Kind of sounds like sexual preference is different than the gender.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Lani, Karen said, so you came alive when you became your authentic self. Would you like to speak to that?
True. Fact. Yes. I think that is accurate, I would say. 100%. Like I said before, just I don't know. I wasn't able to it's such a weird feeling. I can't describe it, but it just felt like I opened my eyes for the first time, and not even like I don't know, like I could experience life. And I'm sure a lot of people have had that experience that aren't trans, you know, like when you maybe like become awakened to something or whatever, and it becomes really cool. But that was definitely being trans for me, and not even coming out, but starting testosterone and getting surgery, like those things really, really, really changed my life. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Lani, you've touched on a lot of things in this conversation, but you said that your experience it was unique in that you were in a very supportive environment. You know, your mom and dad, you go to counseling. But can you talk about situations where it's not that way? Because I think I don't want anybody to think that it's all rosy. There are, like you said, there are two sides, and I've interviewed people that have expressed the two sides, but I wanted to hear it from you what that other look like.
Yeah. So everything you've heard about my experience is like in the top 1% of all trans experiences, you know, like I'm incredibly lucky with my parents, with my friends, with the fact that I've been able to access medical transition, with the school that I went to, with the town that I live in. Like everything has been really, really lucky for me, but that is really not the case for most trans people. You know, trans youth, I think I have a statistic here that like 20 to 40% of homeless youth are LGBT, and 5 to 10% of trans youth are homeless. So like it really, really is not the case, and they get kicked out all the time. You know, like parents are really, really unsupportive and just not very nice. And yeah, and friends can be really mean, and that can encourage. And also like the suicide rate for trans people is 40%, you know, like that's a ridiculous amount, like percentage for I think the average percent of suicide is like 10% or something like that. So 40% is incredible in a bad way. And yeah, so I'm just super lucky. And obviously that changes. It's also because I'm white and because I transitioned to being a man, as we talked about before. So yeah, all of that plays into it.
2 questions regarding the Pilates community. Sarah asked, how or has the Pilates community embraced trans people?
Well, you know, that's a great question. I don't think enough. The question was, how has the Pilates community embraced trans people? Yeah, I don't think the Pilates community is diverse enough, and trans is part of diversity. So it's a bigger discussion, and we need to look in the mirror, and it's not diverse enough. And we absolutely need to embrace all people. And that statement needs to be made loud and clear. Did you have anything to add to that?
You know how I feel, so you echoed everything I've said and feel.
Loud and clear. And it's you know, it's just the whole spectrum. I mean, we're teaching well-being. We have to live well-being. And well-being is being kind, being generous, being loving, being embracing to all people. No difference, but we need to educate ourselves. Lani, I am just learning so much from you today. You really, I feel like an infant, and you are educating me in something, I mean, in life, you know, that really I regard myself as somewhat educated and informed, but, you know, at almost 66, you've taught me some really important lessons.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And you have too, for me. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have 2 items here from our friend Beth. She said the standardization of asking someone's pronouns like we do their name is one step that each individual and studio can make to make more space and inclusion while reducing microaggressions. This may have been something covered in the last call, but she was saying microaggressions also touches on this here too.
Mm-hmm.
And she said also it may be helpful to define the acronym LGBTQIA+, and how each one relates to the gingerbread person. that might be a question for you, Lani, here, but speaking into the Pilates community, I think that's something that would be interesting, no?
Well, that would be interesting. I'm just going to go back to the LGBTQ.
You added another letter
She
there.
said LGBTQ,
So I had an interesting question. I get up to LGBTQI plus quite easily, and then I just heard some more. I've seen my dear friend Stella struggle over the last few weeks. So I was wondering whether whether they should be separate identities. Maybe because I think people tend to start clumping. I hope I'm not sounding in any way insensitive. Quite the contrary. I want people to really have their own identity, and I think we start thinking of people as these letters, and we're adding on letters. And I mean, the trans community now, I'm just so really blown away by all you're telling me about the trans community. I have not known enough about the trans community. Spending so many years in the dance world, gays, homosexuals, lesbians were very much part of my life. But I haven't encountered, I don't think, enough trans people to feel that I know enough about it. So maybe all being together has
it's kind of
in some way been a little bit of a disservice.
Yeah, because I kind of feel like it's the same thing when we talk about Black people. We started with Black, and then it was African American, and then we decided to call it BIPOC, and we're trying to label everyone, and we're all just individuals. But also when we look at applications, when you go to apply for different things, it's one of the things they ask you right away. What is your gender, your sex, and what's your race? How do you identify? And I'm like, right there, just even when you go to enroll in school, it's already making you feel separate or different, or you have to perform in a box.
But even BIPOC starts to me sounding as if it's too...
It's restrictive.
Yeah, it's putting everyone in this box.
We're going to fit into this box.
And, you want to be African American, or you want to be a Black woman.
Just a Black woman.
Right, and not necessarily in this box of a bunch of letters. This is just coming to me now.
Yeah, it's just coming as we're talking. This is how conversations go with Rael and I.
No, it's so bad. I think it can be both, right? It can be both. Like, you can have the broad umbrella, the LGBT plus. I just stop it at plus because I don't know, it's a lot of letters. But there's a lot of them. And you can have queer and lesbian and gay and trans and all these things. And you can have everything. It doesn't have to be like you take away from one thing to add to another. It's not a zero-sum game, right? Like, you can have LGBT and LGB and trans and all these different things and all these different categories. And also you can have none of it. You can be like, no, I don't want to. I'm just going to live my life. And if people want to know what to refer to me as, I'll tell them, but this isn't going to be a label thing, which I think is so cool that some people do that. And yeah, I just think that's awesome. Yeah.
People also get scared they're going to miss out on a letter. And
That's my fear.
That they don't want to be disrespectful at all, but they may miss out on,
I think that's the least disrespectful thing you can do. If you're just missing a letter, I think you're completely fine in the acronym.
I used to like I missed a bunch of letters. That's what I was my hand. I really did.
Yeah, but no, I think I miss letters all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and
so I have a question for you, Lani, because I watch a lot of TV, and I read your list, and a lot of the shows that you listed are also some of my favorites.
Yeah.
Do you find that now that I want to say media in general is now starting to normalize this or just bring it more out to people, do you feel that might help change some of the attitudes?
Oh my gosh, yeah, like completely. the same thing happened with gay and lesbian people, right? Like they were completely underrepresented, and there was an uptick in hate crimes and not being accepted by society. And now it's getting more normalized to see gay people in shows, and that has led to a downward trend in hate crimes towards trans people and more acceptance. And it's the same thing happening with trans people, right? Where now we're just reaching that point of like, okay, maybe we can start putting trans people in things just for the hell of it, right? And or making like stories about trans people. And that helps so much. You know, we don't think of it as a big thing, but really, you know, culture is shaped by media and TV and film and all of these things. And when you see people in the movies and you see a story surrounding them, it humanizes them and in turn that group so much. It's ridiculous. Like I also had a negative kind of connotation with trans people before I saw any on YouTube or movies or anything like that. You know, I was like, oh, I don't really know about these people, so I'm going to steer clear, right? And then I started getting to know some trans people. I started seeing them in movies and being just aware of their existence. And that really helps. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm just, was there another question? Yeah, I'm just so inspired by you and by youth. It just brings a little story to mind of our son, Ilan, who's just a couple of years older than you, Lani. And you somehow remind me of each other, actually. And Ilan came home from school one day in his teens, and we were having dinner, and he just said, oh, by the way, so-and-so, a friend of mine is bisexual, and could you just pass the salt? And, dinner's night. It was just like an off-the-cuff comment. It was just so, and Adele and I were, we were sitting there, wow, that's quite a statement. And for him, it was just very casual. Oh, it's by the way, it's just happening, and it's just, accepted. Mm-hmm. And I think that is so amazing. I think it's great. I have such faith and hope and optimism for the future when I look at you, young men like Ilan, the youth, so fantastic. I know we will overcome. I know we can. This is just a wave of goodness that's going out into society. And this negativity, this hate, it's got to go. It's got to stop. And we're doing our little part, playing our little part. So thank you again, Stella.
Yeah.
Lani, I love you. You're amazing. Thank you, Yasmin, for being part of my life for so many years. And I love you all. Thank you so much for attending. And we'll do another one soon.
Yeah.
I'm going to put a list of resources in the chat that you can watch if you want to get more, more aware of it, or some documentaries, some people on YouTube that helped me. They're all really, really good resources and things like that. So yeah, for sure.
And also this will be available at a later date if you'd like to view it. Our marketing team will put the word out, let you know when you can watch it again, or share it with a friend or someone that's not a friend. But, just share, because we want to educate everybody, as many people as we can, about these various conversations that we will continue to have over the next years, many years.
Absolutely. And Ellen, thank you for your comments. You said that she learned a lot, and she was under the impression that transgender was a different thing than it is, and she learned a lot from you. So thank you, Lani, for being willing to share.
Thank you for coming to this. Like all of you guys, thank you. Like you coming here really means a lot to me, and it shows me that all you guys want to learn and you want to change the way you think about things, and that really, really means a lot to me. So thank you guys. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Appreciate you guys. That's strong.